If anyone has not subscribed to our channel yet, subscribe now by clicking the bell icon next to it and put it in all. You can watch all the latest videos I post without missing them. In 1966, a scientist who was very popular at that time released a book. There was a lot of information in that book. That information was related to the Earth. No one had ever heard of such information before. The CIA classified that book and then declassified it again a few years later. But the CIA released only 57 pages out of the 284 pages in that book, and all the other pages were sanitized, that is, erased in CIA language. Why did the CIA consider that book such a dangerous book? Why did they have to hide it? Why did they keep it for about 60 years without the public knowing? And even now, a lot of information in that book is being hidden without our knowledge. The person who wrote it wrote that the Earth will end. And if they are really afraid, will everything that is said in that book come true as it is and the world will end? In this video we are going to know about it completely. So why not let's get into the video. In 1966, a man named Dr. John Thomas, a former McDonnell Douglas engineer, released a book called The Adam and Eve Story, The History of Cataclysms by John Thomas. It may seem very normal when you see the name, but the reason for giving that name to the book is to tell us that the end of the world is going to happen. He gave that name to us. In Western countries, people believe that Adam and Eve were the first people on Earth. That is, the Earth will reach the stage where everyone dies and Adam and Eve are born again. What Thomas says in that book is that there is going to be a shift in the poles of the Earth, due to which a major cataclysm is about to happen, and according to Thomas, all these shifts are cyclical and they keep hitting the Earth at regular intervals. Due to that, disasters keep coming from time to time. Due to those disasters, all the humans will also be extinct, and again humans will start from this Stone Age period, and currently we are the 6th advanced civilization on Earth, and there are other civilizations too, but they are all on different continents, and all those continents are not in existence now, so we cannot find any information about them, so we cannot say anything about them. However, he is not the only scientist who has published such theories. Many scientists have also given us this kind of information before. A few years before Thomas published his book, a book with the same kind of story was published in 1958. The name of the person is Charles Hopwood. He also named it The Adam and Eve Story. However, the main title he gave it is The Earth's Shifting Crust. The Earth's crustal displacement hypothesis is also being discussed a lot. What this theory tells us is that the Earth rotates very, very fast. As it rotates, the continents are rearranged at times. As a part of that, we have seen many changes before. However, Hopwood informed us that this concept of continental drift that Hopwood said was initially dismissed by everyone as pseudoscience. But there were many people who supported Hopwood. In fact, Albert Einstein also expressed his support for him. However, later it was known that Hopwood was right when he said that continents are moving. As they move, they collide. Due to this, continents are changing, new continents are being born. This is what happened. If we look at it earlier, there was a supercontinent called Pangaea for 4 billion years. Then it broke up into pieces and broke up under the current land mass. If we look at it before Pangaea, there was another supercontinent called Gondwana. This too existed for 400 million years. Before Gondwana, there was a supercontinent called Pan-Ocean. Before that, there were Rodinia, Columbia, Arctica, Kennerland, and so on. There are many such supercontinents. There are many if you say so, and all of them later broke up and formed again. And each time, each supercontinent was formed. At present, however, there are no such supercontinents. All are continents. So maybe Einstein and some scientists, they all accepted this together, and in fact, Charles Hopwood later released another book called The Path Off the Pole has given many updates related to his previous theories. In it, Hopwood has told that the poles of the Earth are constantly moving, and this was also dismissed as pseudoscience at that time, but later this has also been proven. Hopwood believes is that the pole shift occurs between 15 and 40 degrees, and that such a shift occurred 9,600 before the Common Era, that is, approximately 11,600 years ago. However, recently, a thing that has surprised scientists a lot is that Pierce's map. Why does this Pierce map confuse scientists so much? We discovered Antarctica in the year 1820, but a few hundred years before that. Scientists do not understand the location or information related to Antarctica in this Pierce map. And what Pierce himself said about this is that he made this map earlier. He said that all the information from different old maps was gathered and made into one map. So everyone knew about Antarctica for many years before that. And how did it happen? So what Charles Hopwood said was definitely that the Earth's axis was shifting. In fact, scientists said that if the Earth's axis had not shifted by 15 degrees, that is, if it was 15 degrees to the other side of its current position, Antarctica would not have been completely covered with ice. And what Hobgood says is that after the ice civilizations, such maps were made many times, and because of that, we do not find any information related to them, but he kept saying that these were made at that time. But it is just a theory. If so, it has not been proven yet. However, this pole shift is still controversial. Even though we know that pole shifts happen all the time, these continental drifts happened only a few hundred to a few thousand years ago and have not happened again since then. Dr. John Thomas explains in his book Adam in this story that if this shift happens in less than a day, if we know the full details about it, it would be much worse. In fact, it would seem much worse than a Hollywood disaster movie. We have all seen 2012, right? We all feel that the end of the world movie is worse than that. Sam Thomas begins his book with a chapter that gives us the first information about what conditions will occur on Earth during a pole shift. He says that even if we do not hear a loud noise during a pole shift, even if it is very small, the noise will be very strange and very scary. That noise comes from inside the Earth. It's coming, it's not something else. The sound of the earthquake is very loud. Never before in history have people seen such a huge earthquake. All the mountains in California are completely shaken. All the people are running in extreme fear. The sea water comes up to a height of about 2 miles. So it completely destroys bridges and other things and goes eastward and reaches the coast. At that time, the wind also comes very fast. It feels like a supersonic bombardment. And the Pacific Sea water reaches a height of a big mountain and it breaks the top of Los Angeles. Then it reaches San Francisco and completely destroys it and completely turns it into pieces of wood. Then it spreads across the entire continent. The winds blowing at a speed of 1,000 miles per hour destroy the entire continent. But why does such a violent wind come on Earth? Basically, the Earth rotates at a speed of 1,000 miles per hour, otherwise we would not feel like we are rotating because everything is rotating along with the land, that is, water or atmosphere, everything is rotating. But what Thomas is saying is that if there is a pole shift, then the air and water of the Earth will continue to rotate, but the landmass will stop rotating. Due to this, many of the molten sublayers on the Earth will break. A large amount of lava will come out of it, and if it happens under the sea, then tsunamis will automatically occur. He said that due to this, all the volcanoes on the Earth will also break and all the surrounding areas will be completely destroyed. Los Angeles or San Francisco or Chicago or Dallas or New York or Boston, these will also still remain. They will only remain in history, but not a single atom will remain there. He said that, and millions of people will die in just a few hours. He said, so imagine for yourself if a car suddenly stops while traveling at 1,000 miles per hour, what would happen to you inside? Similarly, if a city traveling at 1,000 miles per hour suddenly stops, all the skyscrapers there will collapse. Millions of people will fall under them and die. The same thing will happen to humans if you put food in a food processor. Only a few will survive. In fact, it is unlucky to survive like that because even if they survive, the conditions they will face will be very bad. They will have to travel over cities filled with water, mud, and debris about 2 miles high. So, if South America observes a sea wave higher than the Andes, then within a day, that entire city will be completely destroyed, and in fact, the entire continent will be engulfed in molten earth fire. It will burn, and sometimes violent seas will reach the coast, due to which all the people will also freeze, that is, they will not have anything to do with them. Man, beast, plant, mud. All these will also freeze completely in just 4 hours. If the shift happens, the sun will also stop because the sun basically rotates. We will rotate around the sun. So when the land stops rotating, the light of the sun will only hit one side and the other side will not get any light at all. So the area where the sun hits becomes very hot, and the area where it is cold will notice the temperature drop up to 180 degrees. So even the warmest areas there will notice the temperature at -80 degrees at that time. So everything will freeze within a few hours. Europe will not be spared from it. All the cities will be completely destroyed. In fact, the desert areas will also be completely destroyed. They will be wiped out, and they will also be filled with water. This will continue for about 6 days. On the 6th day, the sea will calm down a little, otherwise all the damage that should have happened will have already been done. The Bay of Bengal Basin is actually in the east part of India, which is now at the North Pole of the Earth. Moreover, the Pacific Ocean, which is the area west of Peru, is now at the South Pole. And new ice caps are starting to form near the polar areas. The Greenland and Antarctic regions are becoming equatorial emergent areas and are rotating, and their tropical conditions are changing all the time. And what Thomas said is that there is a chance of a 90-degree shift in the Earth's axis, and at that time the poles will either reach the equator or the equator will reach the poles. New York will completely reach the bottom of the ocean. Everything above that, it will be full of mud. In fact, it will also become like Atlantis. we should not be surprised. Similarly, San Francisco or Los Angeles or Chicago or Dallas or Boston will also be left with nothing to say there. So then, whoever survives without dying will start a new Stone Age, and they will continue their lives with the sea cities on Earth that we have been told about so far, such as Dvarka or Mu. They will still have to live with the burden of God. There is no other option. But the first chapter of Dr. Thomas's book is so terrifying, but when it comes to the next few chapters, they will be even more terrifying. And in fact, he also tried to prove a point called his post-shift and tried to tell us how and when it happened before that. He also told us that one of the facts is already starting now. If you look at every culture, floods are seen. Many people dismiss them as myths. There are more people who don't believe in them than there are people who believe in them. However, the Abrahamic religions have the Noah flood, the Mayans have the Hurricane flood, and in fact, the word hurricane comes from that word. The Hawaiians had new floods. The Sumerians also mentioned the flood called Gilgamesh. The Europeans, the Asians, the Pacific Islanders, and the Native American tribes all mentioned such floods many times in their cultures. And each time a great flood came and all the civilizations that existed at that time completely disappeared. New civilizations were formed again. All this happened. But one flood can be considered a myth. 2 floods can be considered a myth. If you look at history as a whole, there are 40 floods, so there are number 40 flood myths, so definitely this seems to be a much higher chance of being a fact than a myth. In fact, we have talked about floods many times before, but some floods are very, very important floods. And the most important thing that Thomas said here is that he said that the Great Flood did not happen 11,500 years ago as we think, but only 6,500 years ago. That is, he said that there was a Great Flood, and in 1960, there was not much chance, so he could not prove it. But in recent times, a proof has been found for it. What archaeologists have said is that a flood called Gunyu happened in China. This is evidence for a Great Flood. In fact, many scientists have said that floods also happened in the Mediterranean and Black Sea areas, which are also 6,500 to 7,000 years ago. Scientists have reported exactly what happened, and recently some scientists have reported that there was a flood 11,500 years ago, another flood 11,500 years ago, and if we look at that timeline, it seems more likely that it happened 6,500 years ago. But scientists have reported that, and in fact, the Bering Land Bridge completely disappeared underwater during that flood that happened 18,500 years ago. Before that, the Wisconsin glacial period ended completely 29,000 years ago. Before that, global floods happened 43,800 years ago. But the problem here is that we know that all of those things happened, but they all happened, meaning that there was an advanced civilization there. Those floods ended that advanced civilization and allowed a new civilization to form. But what mainstream archaeology and paleontology are saying is that first civilization emerged in Mesopotamia 6,500 years ago, so if it's a reboot, then we've all been reading the wrong information and believing it to be true, because if we look at the base of the Great Sphinx, we see many patterns on it, all of which indicate that there was a lot of water running through that area, and it was running very, very fast. If water erosion happened on the Sphinx, then the Sphinx must have been created 6,500 years before the last flood, right? That is, were the Sphinx built before the Egyptian civilization started? Basically, archaeologists don't like this idea at all, and the Sphinx was built 10,000 years ago, so they are ready to accept it. But there is another evidence related to this cataclysmic pole shift, mainly about a great mud flood and a sunken continent. There is also information about Atlantis. We also need to know a lot about Atlantis. In this particular point of view, John Thomas also told us another thing in his book, which is that Plato also told us about Atlantis in his books. It was an advanced utopian society that was also destroyed due to a cataclysm. But even now, no one has any evidence that Atlantis existed. If not, many people believe that it could have really happened. Research is being done about it. However, a geological feature related to this has been found in Northwest Africa, namely the Richard structure. Basically, it is also called the Eye of the Sahara. If this is what we see in the middle of the Sahara Desert, its size, shape, all these things they match exactly with Plato's Atlantis, because Plato said that Atlantis had concentric rings with a waterway flowing in the middle. In fact, Atlantis believers also believe that this could definitely be Atlantis. If not, we will have to know completely whether it is a man-made structure or a natural formation. Then we will understand. However, an amazing thing has been discovered near the Eye of the Sahara. In fact, it has been seen in many places on this earth, but its appearance in that area has surprised many people. What they are large ripples. Basically, they look like big mountains, but they are all ripples created due to water flow. In fact, some of them are up to 50 feet high, which means that they are the height of a 5-story building. All this was created due to water. What some scientists are saying about this is that there is definitely a very large amount of water in this area. It could have been created by something like a tsunami or a flood, or it could have been created by something like that, but it's not that easy. In fact, the tsunami that came here was very, very big. It could have flowed between 2 and 300 million cubic feet of water per second. It's very, very big water. That's why they think that this happened. Okay, let's say Atlantis was destroyed because of this disaster. But was Atlantis the only one destroyed because of this disaster? Were there any others? If we look at the other side of this world, we see a lost continent called the Land of Mu. It was first mentioned by a person named Augustus Lee Plang, and then the person who thought about it the most was James Churchward. Both of them also took different books, one from the Maya, one from India, and by taking all of these, we have a lot of information about this lost continent called Mu. They provided, and what they were saying was that this is a very, very large continent that is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and it reaches Hawaii in the north and Easter Island in the south, and in fact it touches the Japanese islands as well. But they said that two people named James Brahman and William Scott Elliott did a lot of research on this. What they also said was that this continent was destroyed due to a cataclysm, and that 11,500 years ago. So the same date again, and near the coast of Japan we have an underwater ruin called Yonaguni Monument, and also evidence of a civilization called non-metal. Scientists believe that it could be the southern part. There are a large number of structures made of rocks in this non-metal area. Who built them and why they were built remains a mystery. Many people believe that there are many curses around them. But whoever built them, they were very advanced people. Recently, we know through radar imaging that there is also an artificial irrigation patient system in that non-metal. So definitely there are all kinds of systems in that area. That means they must have had a very high level of technology at that time. Similarly, if we look at Easter Island, it is in this eastern part of Mu, and here too, evidence related to the cataclysm is visible. There are moai statues there, that is, heads are visible. There are about 1,000 of them on the eastern island. However, what many people do not know is that in East Island we can see the heads above, but their bodies are actually underground. So there are two options here. Whoever built these could have completely covered their bodies and left only their heads exposed. Those statues, which are about 30 feet tall, only had their heads exposed. That means that 80-ton statues are not that easy to lift. No matter how difficult it was, they would have buried them all. The second option is that all of the statues were completely above ground, but at a particular time, something completely lifted them, leaving only their heads exposed. So the first option is unlikely to happen, because after making such a huge statue with so much effort, why would they cover their bodies and leave only their heads exposed? And if it comes to East Island, it is a small island in the middle of the ocean. There is no human settlement anywhere near it. But at that time, 12,000 people live in that area, and where did they all come from? What mainstream anthropologists are saying is that many people from Polynesia may have taken a canoe and came to this area, and why they all came to this area, which is about 1,000 miles away, is a mystery, and no one has the answer to solve that mystery. So they all came across many seas. But if there really was a continent called Mu, why did they all have to cross seas? If not, they could have come all over land. Here is another theory. The Polynesian languages have many similarities with the Greek languages, and they worship a god on Easter Island, and that god is almost equal to the Egyptian sun god Ra, and in fact these connections the similarities don't stop there. There are some connections with Greek, Egyptian, and even Indian cultures. So all this seems like a chain link, and all this is evidence that a cyclical cataclysm took place there. But the biggest questions here are how and when. Of course, no one has the answer to these questions at the moment. A man named Dr. John Thomas has been telling us something in the news that a global cataclysm is coming in the future. Perhaps if we keep that in mind, we may get some clarity. And in this story, Thomas also gave us a diagram in which he told us about the cross-section of the Earth, and not only that, he also told us about the process of that cataclysm. Here, while showing the cross-section of the Earth, he told us that on the inside of the front cover, we have two. If we look at the molten layers, we see two orange ones. The first one is a little important because it is a very thin molten layer. It is only visible to us at a depth of 60 miles from the surface of the Earth. Then it continues like that for another 60 miles. After that, if we reach 120 miles, we do not see any such signs. If we go to a depth of 1800 miles, the molten layers start again, and in that area we have the mantle, and it continues like that for another 1,300 miles. And what seismology tells us is that the two orange layers have already melted, and not only that, but they also have a temperature of 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So a man named Dr. Thomas predicted this seismic activity not just in one area but in the whole Earth. He studied the electrical, and based on the magnetic structure, some layers were selected, and in which areas they were solid and in which areas they were weak, and based on that, he told us when this problem is likely to repeat itself. What he said was that as long as the Earth maintains its magnetic and electric structure, it remains in order and it rotates on its normal axis. But once every few thousand years, this magnetic and electrical orderliness is slightly disturbed. At that time, the shallow molten layer in the interior of the Earth becomes disorganized. At that time, that molten layer acts as a lubricant for the ice caps. They also pull out the entire shell in the interior of the Earth. During this time, the ice caps shift by about 90 degrees, which can lead to very, very dangerous situations. He believed that the Earth's whatever solid is in the crust, at that time it will turn into liquid, and after that all the land masses will also move completely, then the axis of the Earth will completely shift, and apart from that all the geographical situations will also completely change, and the atmosphere which is on the land as well as in the oceans will not shift at all, but it will start moving from west to east, and at that time its speed near the equator will be up to 1,037 miles per hour. So the shell will definitely shift the poles at that time, so definitely all the winds and oceans will also move towards east and destroy all the cities on the whole Earth. Also the winds will also destroy all the cities on the Earth. Everything that man has created along with man is basically the whole process there. But Thomas upgraded his prediction in 1993, which means he gave us a clarity on when all this could happen. He said that this shift could happen in the year 2000. Otherwise, it would be about 22 years after 2000 or even 23 years. If not, it has not happened yet. In fact, what he mentioned was that Nostalgia or Edgar Cayce made the same kind of prediction. He also said that we are currently in the due date, which means it could happen anytime at any time. However, there are some bullet points related to this Adam and Eve story, which means that even if you read the entire book, it will not be of much use. The main points seem very important to us. But why do many scientists oppose this? There are also some wrong analyses in it, which means that before that, articles came out on the internet, books came out on the internet, videos came out on the internet. Also, some information has been given in this, and one of the wrong information regarding this book is that John Thomas is not his real name because he is giving very wonderful information, so he said he gave some other name, but really his name is John Thomas. If not, John is his nickname. His real name is Chancey Powers Thomas. He was born in Missouri in 1920. He died in 1998 at the age of 78. He was married. He has 2 children, he has grandchildren, and in fact he is an electrical engineer. He worked for McDonald. He was also a UFO expert in 1990, and he was also on Johnny Carson on April 7, 1965. He is so basically his story is not in one place but in many places. Dr. Thomas has written many books along with this, and in fact in it he talks about ESPs, these FOs. He also wrote books about childbirth. So what does it have to do with childbirth? He wrote all the information he knew in the form of books. Another wrong information about this book is that this book is 284 pages, but the CIA declassified only 57 pages and kept everything else with them. But that is also not true. Later it was found out that the actual pages in this book were only 57 pages because the conclusion in the table of contents is at page number 45. That means the CIA did not hide anything from them. They kept the book as it is. If there is any rumor that has come out, page 8, page 18, page 20, all these also seem to be missing. They say that the CIA kept all these missing pages with them. But that is also not true. They should have included all of them in the original book. It was left blank. A copy was released. Some people said it was the original copy. But all those pages were left blank on purpose. So if the CIA didn't hide anything from them, it seems that someone intentionally added useless information along with useful information in the document they released. But no one knows exactly why they did that. But at the time of the book's classification, Thomas McDonald was working at Douglas as an EFFO and anti-gravity technology expert. He also worked as a project engineer at Bell Labs. He was very intelligent on missile guidance systems. But the problem is that he is eccentric. He sees something and believes it to be true. Based on that, he prepares a report and puts it in front of the world and tries to convince them that it is true. In fact, he also wrote the book. It was not completely banned, only that one document was banned, all the rest were out there as it is. He also gave follow-ups related to them twice between 1971 and 1973. No one stopped them either. Those books were still in circulation. They were not classified. So Thomas also knew that those books were not banned. If not, it means that some hype was created. He also never talked about it anywhere. But basically, all his ideas were taken from other people. We have already talked about it. Like Hobgood, Immanuel Veliskowski, and some others. He took his favorite parts from his favorite topics and combined them all and created a theory. For example, do you know that ice caps knocking the Earth off the axis? This concept is in Hobgood's first book somewhere. He took it and included it in his book. He mentioned it, but later I said that Hobgood released another book, in which he admitted that the information he gave in his first book was wrong, but Thomas stuck to his first idea. The problem is that he did not provide any evidence for what he said about the magnetism and electricity of the Earth. Not only that, he did not provide any evidence for what he said about the ice core samples. He also did not have any evidence for the information he gave about the ice core samples. What evidence do scientists have? Ice has been on Antarctica for at least 15 million years, and we do not know about the western side, but we do have clear information about Antarctica, but what he is saying is completely wrong. Later, John Thomas also released another book, that is, he released an uncensored digital version of his first book, Eve's Story. Is there any evidence in that? Many people looked to see if he had given any updates or corrected any mistakes. There were no corrections or evidence in it. However, there were chapters about ESP, UFOs, and angels. So the book does not seem scientific in any way. In fact, it seems as if he has converted all the bad thoughts in his brain into a book. So basically, many people started to think that whatever he wrote before might have been completely wrong. And many people started hating Dr. John Thomas since then. But there is another basic problem here. There is some evidence to support his ideas. Even though he is not a serious researcher, there are many mistakes in the information he gave, but some of what he gave has also been proven. For example, when it comes to global floods, we see evidence related to them in many places, and these floods are particular. It did not come from the oceans but from the rapid melting of glaciers, and because of them, tsunamis were also created. Water forms formed at a height of a few thousand feet. Temperature drops were also very high and some froze instantly. For example, if we come to the case of mammoths, they froze within seconds. They froze as they were. They even had food in their mouths, but they froze. So freezing immediately while eating means that whatever idea he said is there, it really happens, but science says that there is no such possibility, so mammoths support his idea. Scientists also say that he also said that the Earth's axis shifts due to seismic activity, and this was also proven later. NASA recently visited the Indonesian. There was an earthquake in 2004. At that time, it was observed that the North Pole of the Earth shifted 25 centimeters towards the east, and also the rotation of the Earth also sped up a little. That day, the day length decreased by 27 microseconds. Similarly, in 2010, an earthquake also occurred in Chile. Due to this, the Earth's axis shifted and the day shortened. The same thing happened in Japan the next year. So definitely all these have been proven to be true. So, due to earthquakes, obviously the speed of the Earth increases a little. The moon slows it down. So the balance is lost. So, we don't need to worry too much about this. But now, the thing that we need to worry about is that the magnetic poles are shifting. That is a very, very important thing. The poles of the Earth are flipping off, meaning that north becomes south and south becomes north. This is what we need to know. It is known that the thing we need to understand here is that it has been changing slowly for the past few 100,000 years. Also, if we come to the average time between one shift and another, it is approximately 3 lakh years, and the last time a shift occurred was 780,000 years. That is, we are in an overview here too. So such a shift can happen at any time. Since the lava in the volcanoes cools down suddenly, it automatically brings about slight differences in the magnetic fields, and due to that, the chances of such shifts happening are increasing, and the poles are obviously moving every year. In 1990, scientists discovered that the North Pole is drifting by about 9 miles every year, and it is happening as a study, so the GPS was also updated accordingly. So according to the way it is changing from time to time, the GPS is also updated. However, the GPS is not always accurate. The first search was to update once every 5 years, but then it was updated once a year, then it was updated once every 6 months. Now, at the moment, the pole is drifting up to 40 miles a year, and the Earth's magnetic field is slowly weakening very quickly. And all this science is telling us that a shift is coming, and the animals on Earth that live using geomagnetism are finding it difficult to survive. Gradually, due to this, all the other living things are also doing well. Due to these pole shifts, humans may not die, because if we look at the past 3 million years, we have not had any major problems. We were alive then, but we are safe now, but our ancestors did not have satellites, GPS, or planes. There were no mobiles or technology, due to which they were able to live safely and they were able to continue their lifestyle as it is, but now it is not like that. When such a pole shift happens and the magnetic field of the Earth becomes completely distorted, then automatically due to that, solar winds, solar flares, solar storms, coronal mass ejections, all these things that happen through solar activity come directly and hit the Earth. Our magnetic field is protecting us. If the magnetic field is not there, then many problems will be created on the Earth due to it. All the people will also suffer a lot from cancer, and climate changes will also happen very much. And due to these climate changes, another major problem will also come, which is that all our power grids will be completely destroyed. That solar they are destroyed due to activity and they are also destroyed due to weather changes. Due to this, in some parts of the Earth, electricity is cut for a few days or a few weeks. In some parts, it is not enough even if it is cut for months. So we have to live without any connection to the outside world. So when a person named Dr. John Thomas released his book, at first everyone rejected it as pseudoscience, but after 50 years, many of them were accepted by many people. Some of them were even proven. So definitely, what is the difference between science and pseudoscience? Time. It takes some time. Until then, they consider it pseudoscience. But after that, they believe it is real science. So that is the situation. But the problem is that now he has said a lot of things. Even if any of what St. Thomas said happens, we will not be there to see the rest. So that's it, guys. This is the video. If you like the information in the video, like it. Share the video. If anyone has not subscribed to our channel yet, subscribe now and press the bell icon next to it so that you do not miss my further videos. Many people watch but do not subscribe. So please try to subscribe. Thank you so much, guys. Bye. Meet you next video. Bye.